Welcome back to another episode of Unpack That. And I thought this would be a fun episode to talk about because my phone's always listening to me. I think it knows I'm a therapist. And so on my algorithm, it came up with this article from the Wall Street Journal. Are therapists to blame for the rise of adults cutting off their parents? And the little blurb underneath is, many moms and dads believe that their adult children are getting bad advice. And a growing number of researchers agree. Quote, everything becomes trauma. And I thought that was really interesting because trauma is so hard to put in a bubble, because I could have something happen to me and I could say this was really traumatic, but I could have a friend have the same thing happen to them and be like, it wasn't that traumatic. And when I say it's hard to put in a bubble, I think a lot of people, majority will agree, like assault in any form, a murder, abuse, or like all horrific traumatic things. And then everything else is also hard to navigate and put like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like to label. And again, that's why it's like trauma is really hard to kind of just categorize in itself. Like there's the big ones, but then when you don't have the top tier big ones, it's like, okay, what is considered trauma then? Because everyone's different. And again, maybe I would say those are still very like traumatic things, any of those 3 things at the top. And so I thought that article is interesting. And because it was on my Facebook page, it was suggested to me from Fox News. And so I kind of read some of their perspectives on it. I don't know all these people, and I don't want to, if I'm able to, if I have good editing skills, I'll like put it up here. So you guys can like see who said it or not and whatnot. But I'm just going to try to summarize it. And someone said, cutting yourself off from possibly your only support system leads to more depression, not less. This person is Katie Miller, Stephen Miller's wife. I think it's interesting because I can agree in some forms in the sense that there is a depression from cutting off your family because there's a grief of, I wish things could get better. I wish things could change. I wish we could just have a conversation. And maybe they have had multiple conversations and it leads nowhere. But I think from my realm and my perspective and experiences that I've had with other people, that a lot of times parents don't realize how hard it is for their kid to cut them off. It's not a quick, oh, this happened, I'm going to cut them off. There's either been a lot of years of one end trying more than the other, or them both trying, it's just not getting anywhere. But I never have seen it just be oh, this happened, so I'm cutting them off. I've always had it be very, this has happened, we tried this, I tried this, they did this, I did this, like very back and forth. And I think the hard part with that is that no one's happy. Neither side wins. A lot of it can stem from just communication in general. And in my experience, when I have clients and they are talking about parental trauma they have, I always suggest or tell them, like, do you want to cut them off? Do you want to have harder boundaries? Do you want to do X, Y, and Z? Or we could brainstorm or whatever. And more than that, it's always just having harder boundaries with their parents. At least in my experience, again, I'm just one therapist of many, and I only have so many like clients. But that's how I've always experienced it. But I think also it's, again, it all just stems from communication. And I think it also stems from years of whatever, again, this event or events could be. And that's why I think it's hard to just label trauma, because everyone's trauma is different. So when I say events, I mean like traumatic events traumatic events. But I think there is, again, that depression though, because it's grief. And that's why it's hard to navigate that itself, because grief is, I have a whole episode about grief. And so if you want to watch that, you can. But grief is always hard to navigate in itself because it comes in waves. It's not linear. And so I agree with her in some essence. What I don't agree with her in is it doesn't have to be your only support system. Sometimes people's parents don't support them at all in their whole life, and they're just raising their kid, but not there for their kid. And again, I'm a newer therapist, so I could be biased and I don't know all the numbers, and that's okay because I'm learning and doing all the stuff. But I think a lot of the times there's some parents that are just trying to get by and doing their best, and they're learning from what they learned from their parents or from the people that raised them. And again, it's not, they did the best they could, or they're doing the best they could. And it's not no blame or shame on them, but also they can grow and learn if their kid needed something different. And it's not that their kid, if it's very different if their kid's being bratty or spoiled or whatever, but it's more if their kid needed something different in the sense of maybe they needed more hugs, or maybe they needed more validation. And I'll give an example. For instance, if I was a parent and my parents gave me no validation, and then I had a kid and I was just validating 100% all the time, my child could grow up and be like, my parents were too validating. I thought I was this high overachiever. I could do nothing wrong. And then, reality hit, something bad happened, blah, blah, blah. I then lost myself. I'm just brainstorming. And so it's more that the parent, me, overcompensated for something I didn't have. And so then I overcompensated on my kid, and it became a negative instead of a positive in their life. And that's why I kind of make the joke to my friends or coworkers. And I always say, or even my clients, I kind of make a joke. And I'm like, you could have like really great parents or really supportive parents, or you can come in and talk about something completely different. But then everything falls back on moms. Like I always just kind of will say moms in general. Like I think that's just funny, or on parents in general. Like it just always falls back on them. And so I think there's, again, that fine line going back to a little bit earlier about support system. Some people just don't have their parents as support systems. And if some do and they still cut off their parents, then again, that is hard. But I think as they get older, hopefully they have other support than just their parents, or else that in itself is an issue. And when I say that is because they should have friends, or they should, if they don't have a partner, if they have a partner, then their partner or their coworkers, or, more people than just 2 people or 4 people, or like, however, if it's a divided household. And when I mean, not even, divided in the sense of like mom and stepdad, or dad and stepmom, or whatever the case be, or mom and dad, however the lifestyle is. And so that was that comment itself. And then another one I thought was interesting. I don't know this person, but their name is William Weber. They said, parents are to blame for sending their kids to therapists rather than doing their job as parents and holding kid accountable for their actions. If my kid refused to talk to me, he would have been sent to his room with no food until he changes his mind. Then we would discuss his behavior and why it's unacceptable. We don't need child therapists. We need better parenting. So I'm going to break down each sentence because I feel like there's a lot. The first one, when he says parents are to blame for sending their kids to therapists rather than doing their jobs and needing to hold their kid accountable for their actions. I think for that one, accountability is so hard with parents and kids because I feel like, your kid should be doing the thing that you told them to do, and they might throw a fit about it or not, but I think it depends on the action. The one I really wanted to focus on is the last 2 sentences. If my kid refused to talk to me, he would have been sent to his room with no food until he changes his mind. Okay, that's bad. I will say as a therapist, you should not just send your kid home. Send your kid into their room and not feed them. That doesn't sound like great parenting. Again, I'm not a parent, but they should be able to eat. And what does that show the kid? Because you have to think if you're the parent showing this as an action, that's a whole thing I can deep dive on. But I don't think that should be a thing. I think you should be able to talk to your kid, and your kid should be able to talk to you, and you guys have a healthy conversation. And I think that goes back to the next sentence. Then we would discuss his behavior and why it is unacceptable. Sure. We can, like, that's fine. You can definitely talk to your kid and be like, hey, you can't do X, Y, Z. That's unacceptable. That's not cool. That's bad. And that's totally fine because it's a learning lesson. And then last one, we don't need child therapists. We need better parenting. Okay. Again, I can disagree, like, because I think child therapists are amazing. Like, I am not one, but I love all the child therapists that I know because it's literally God sent work. But going back to a little bit earlier with what he said about punishing, in my eyes, punishing the kid just because they're not talking to you. And I think when it comes to talking to your child, there needs to be more you talking to them and listening and them listening to you. And again, I'm not a parent, so I can't say like it's easy talking to a kid. But again, I'm thinking like if we're doing this for like 10 and up, like of year of age, if they're talking about then you're sending them to their room and everything. And of course, like you have like the upper hand, if you want to say, because you're the parent or whatever. Like there's a power balance because you are a parent and they need to listen. But there also needs to be like oh, why is my kid crying or hysterically upset or not talking to me? There must be something I did that upset them. Not even wrong, but just something that didn't sit right with them or didn't hit the way I wanted it to hit with them. And so I think that's where a lot of the big issues are, is that there's not enough listening. And that can be at any age. And I think that's why a lot of people are cutting off their parents. And in another article I saw, different one from this one, it was because I looked at this one again, my algorithm showed me this another article about 5 reasons more Americans are cutting off their own parents, according to psychologists. And number 1 is political and value differences, social media influence, therapy culture, communication breakdowns, and outside influences. I thought that was really interesting because I think politics is always going to be a number 1 thing because it's just politics. And I feel like it's gotten way more divided the past decade. And so that's always just going to be a very hard one. But I think it also goes back to, I think all 5 of these reasonings, maybe, yeah, I would say almost all 5 of them are, there needs to be some open-mindedness or more reflection of, okay, do I need to sit down and either talk to my therapist, talk to my friends, talk to myself, and just get more opinions, and then you be the last one of reflection of, should I cut them off? And again, earlier, like I said, I don't think it should be they did this one thing, I'm cutting them off. Like, no, it's a little extreme. And again, I would say that to any of my clients if they said that. But I would always, at the end of the day, I say, it's your decision. It's your life. I will support you in anything that you decide. Because again, like they leave their room and they leave my office, and I'm not going to follow them, like, and whatever. But if they come back and they just tell me more, we'll just keep talking about it. But I think it's interesting though, because like I said, when it comes to these, it all comes back to open-mindedness in the sense of reflection is mainly what I mean by that. And then also, I agree with that, just communication in general. I think also all of these are just communication. Like even though number 4 says communication breakdown, I think that goes for all 5 of these. And social media influence, yeah, maybe it could just be like, oh, this person did it, so I want to do it, or this thing or whatever. I didn't really do a deep dive in that. But I thought it was really interesting to see those 5 reasonings because I'm like, yeah, all those kind of make sense though to me. I saw another comment on here that talked about, therapists are just doing this like to say, oh, leave your and cut off your parents, and then and then they think it causes more issues. Like we're just trying to like cause problems for our clients. And I would say like maybe there's a few therapists out there in the world that are just trying to get their bag and whatever and get more money. But like 99% of us are not trying to cause more issues for our clients and trying to just break up families just for them to come back and have more problems or more issues or more trauma. Because I think the client itself would either be like, what are you talking about? Or if I really am good at manipulating and I did do that, I think that would just be really unethical. And so I think that's interesting when I saw that someone said that, because I think this is very far from the truth. Now, that is their opinion, but since I do work in therapy, I feel like I have a little bit of a say. Like, it's okay if I say that because I have a piece of stake. Like, I have a piece of stake in this. And so I think it's really interesting. I think it all just goes back to communicating. I don't think it's the therapist's fault if their kid decides to cut you off. Now, again, I can be wrong, and I'm totally up to being wrong. And, maybe there's more to it, and there's going to be more findings down the road. But I think, if anything, I think more people are going to therapy and they're talking about their parents. And then I think the child or the person is mainly just being like, oh, maybe I want to cut them off. I don't think it's therapist pushing that. But I think in the sense if I'm playing devil's advocate for myself, I could see if the client does say that, then the therapist would help them do that, because we would try to give tools. Because like I said, if I had a client that really did want to do that, I would support them and be like, okay, like, let's try it. But also I would give my professional opinion and be like, I support you cutting them off. I feel like some of these things might come up for you, or these things might appear if you do cut them off. And then we just go from there, though. But I think a lot of it stems from people just going to therapy more. A lot of people just not communicating. And I think it's also certain generations of parenting. Because again, I think it goes back to how they were parented, like how your parent was parented, or what they saw or what they were around, and then how they raised their child. And I think in general, it's so hard because parenting does change in each generation. It's very different from our great grandparents to our parents now, or if we're parents, or if you have friends that are parents, or if you're a parent or whatever. And so I think it's really interesting in all that perspective, because everybody changes, everybody evolves and grows. So I think that's also really an interesting part in all of this. I definitely think politics will always be the number one divider when it comes to cutting off family or parents, because it's just always messy. Even if it was, I think it's been the messiest this past 10 years than ever, but it still was kind of hectic 20 years ago. But I definitely think there's very big divide in 10 years. But yeah, overall, I'm biased because I'm a therapist, but again, I have some stake in it because I am one of that. I don't think therapists are encouraging to cut off parents. Like, we might do a little nudge if it is really bad and be like, hey, but at least, again, in my experience, which I've been saying a lot, because a lot of different therapists can have different opinions, which is totally great. And that's how they do therapy, and they're a therapist. But I'm never going to nudge it, because again, it's their life, and I'm never going to try to change it. I'm only there, and I hope other therapists are only there to help them grow, give them tools, have more perspective and insight and all of this stuff. And I think just because you cut off your parents, it depends on the severity, doesn't mean you can't go back. And it doesn't mean you can't have a conversation down the road. It just means in this time right now, like, I do not want you in my life, or I do not need you in my life. But I don't think therapists should be blamed. To wrap it up, I don't think therapists should be fully to blame. But I definitely think there's a shift because, again, more people are going to therapy and maybe just talking about things and going through things and all of that. But I would love to know your guys' thoughts and opinions. And again, you can disagree with me if you would like. I'm totally up for that. But please leave your feedback and your comments, and I'd love to hear what you guys think. And I can't wait to have for another episode of Unpack That.